Okay, open up your Bibles to Proverbs 27. We're going to do the format a little different this time around on Proverbs. I want us to work through these and see if we can figure out what this isn't Solomon, but what the writer is saying with some of these Proverbs. Some of them are easy, some of them might take us a little bit more to work through. But let's start with verses 1 and 2. I tried to group these in a way that I believe they work together. There's a lot of Hebrew parallelisms in these. And we see that especially here in the beginning. So verses 1 and 2, Proverbs 27. Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. Let another praise you, and not your own mouth, a stranger, and not your own lips. What is the writer saying with verses 1 and 2? What about that first one? Do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. What does he mean? Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's talking about humility here. When you boast about something you think is going to happen tomorrow, but what happens if that thing does not come forth and doesn't happen? And so he gives you an answer there in verse 2. Let another praise you, and not your own lips, a stranger, and not your own lips, on your own mouth, and you're not your own lips. So he makes that statement twice there of what we ought to do, the actions we ought to have. And this is the better attitude. Don't be arrogant, but be humble, as Larry was pointing out. 3 and 4. A stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than both of them. Wrath is fierce and anger is a flood, but who can stand before jealousy? I think Alex, was the one that you were asking, what does that mean?
No, not this one.
Not this one? Okay. All right. Stone is heavy and the sand is weighty, but the provocation of a fool is heavier than both of them. Provocation, like obnoxious, irritating kind of behavior. What does that mean?
People might use really strange things.
Yeah, it would be highly irritating. I almost when I look at these two verses, I was thinking more about if I was in a work situation and I had to put up with this fool day in and day out, how irritating that would be. I'd have to hold that up. And that verse 4, wrath is fierce and anger is a flood, but who can stand before jealousy? I think when you look at the Hebrew, there's parallelism between the two. He's defining more about what this fool is doing. Dealing with ordinary ire is hard enough, but with the fury of the jealousy is not open to reason or discussion. You can't reason with someone like this. And I see that's what's going on here. How can you talk with them? Mick and I were talking about debates and how we don't have debate anymore. There is no debating anyone on any topic. This is what this verse is talking about. It's to what end and what good is it? It's like talking to a fool. Does that make sense, or do you see that in that verse, or do you see something else?
Well, there's a lot about, Proverbs talks a lot about fools.
Yeah.
If you look through the whole book, I think it's 70 or more times that fool is mentioned. So it's a fairly prominent characteristic.
Yep.
Going all the way back up, just looking back to the very first chapter where he talks about,
Fool despises
knowledge. Verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So it starts
wisdom and instruction. That's right.
First starts very quickly talking about the fool, and it stays with it for the whole book.
Oh yeah, and there's many sections of just the fool, of how to be wary of them and stay away from them. Very good. Verses 5 and 6 is another parallel. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. Better is open. Is this it?
This is the one. Faithful are the wounds of a friend.
Okay. So better, let's look at the first one. This is another parallel, Hebrew parallelism. Better is open rebuke than love that is concealed. Better is open rebuke. Okay, what does that mean? Yeah, it's open rebuke is someone who's actually trying to help you. Love that is concealed, that's going to be a friend that maybe gives time and attention, but they're not always flattering. Is that first part. But verse 5 points to the communication I got written in here. Communication and interaction among people. Few things are worse than being ignored, and the studied avoidance of honest contact destroys any relationship. Verse 6, though, is a little different. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. I think with that verse 5, you can see verse 6 a little easier.
A friend may do something that hurts you, but it's in your
Best interest, yes. So that's the parallel. But deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. There's the flattery again. No good, nothing good there. It's that concealed love.
You mean like when you're trying to get someone to do something?
Oh yeah, but I'm pretty open about it. I think verses 7 through 10 go together. If you have your Bibles open, it's right. You might want to see if that's true, see if these work together. But I think they do. I see another kind of a rhythm to these. Verse 7, a sated man loathes honey, but to a famished man any bitter thing is sweet. Like a bird that wanders from her nest, so is a man who wanders from his home. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, so a man's counsel is sweet to his friend. Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother far away. I think 7, 8, and 9 are building up to the verse 10. So let's look at that first one. A sated man loathes honey, but to a famished man any bitter thing is sweet. It's pretty obvious, right? So if you're not hungry, you don't need honey. But if you're starving, man, anything at all will make you happy. I'll never forget when I was lost in Hawaii hiking, and I came out and I saw Burger King. And I ate a Whopper and fries, and it was the greatest tasting meal I've ever had. I've never in my life had anything taste better than that. And I remember after that, a few weeks went by, and I saw a Burger King, and I remembered it. I thought, man, I want to have another Whopper, and it was the worst tasting thing ever. But then it was so sweet because I was famished. Like a bird that wanders from her nest, so is a man who wanders from his home. But I think that's in connection with verse 10. How far can a bird wander from its nest before it runs into trouble? If calamity comes, there may be a thunderstorm or something, it needs to stay nearby. Verse 9 goes along with verse 7, and it helps with verse 10. Oil and perfume make the heart glad, so a man's counsel is sweet to his friend. He's talking about things that are nearby. So again, verse 10. Do not forsake your own friend or your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother far away, just like with the bird in the nest. So what is he saying? Why go all the way out there to deal with, to fix your problem when you can go to nearby friends who have your best interest in your heart? Remember that these are typical proverbs are written to children or to their sons, and I believe that's obviously here as well. We'll see that in verse 11. Be wise, my son. And yes, this is what he wants him to do. You don't go traveling far away when you can go to your friends who can help you out nearby. It's like a bird wandering away from its nest. What do you think? That's the way I read the verses 7 through 10. Do you think those belong together, or am I missing something? A little scrunching up of the face here and there. No? Move on?
I don't know if I see the connection between 7 and 9.
No? Sated man loathes honey, but to a famished man any bitter thing is sweet. Oil and perfume makes the heart glad, happiness. So a man's counsel is sweet. I think it's connecting it to the famished man. Any bitter thing is sweet. And finding that counsel is sweet to his friend. Whereas Generally, in that day and age, you would think of family, your brother first, but why? You have your friend right here. And you're forgetting the good counsel you can get from him. I think that's what the Father is trying to impart to his Son. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm stretching that. But I think these four go together, leading up to verse 10. But, I don't know. We can debate that. Any thoughts on that? They all stand alone, you think? Well, they could. But they all seem, the three do to me seem to connect to verse 10. I see a connection to those. All right, we'll keep that. Mark that in your Bible. Look at that. Maybe next week we can revisit, if you so wish. I'd like to do that. Unless you want to say something on that. All right. 11, 12, and 13. Be wise, my son, and make my heart glad, that I may reply to him who reproaches me. A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty. Take his garment when he becomes surety for a stranger, and for an adulterous woman, hold him in pledge. Okay. So here, verse 11, you got the plea of the Father. I think verse 11 kind of forms a heading maybe for this. This teaching. You can ask much of what follows, how much follows maybe placed under this. I didn't put all the verses here together, but if you have your Bibles open, I think this goes from here to verse 27 to the end of the chapter, all goes together. Not all connected, but all this flows together, I believe. I see a lot of things about business practices in these verses, dealing with people in the community. When you look here at verse 11, the dad wants to be able to answer anyone who treats him with contempt or reproach. So his son will either publicly disgrace his dad or enable him to stand proudly before his enemies or those who would want to say something poorly to him. I think 12 and 13 are teaching on business and fiscal well-being. Verse 12, the danger may be economic. It'd be wise to avoid impulsive and unsound business ventures. So you got this young man should not risk his wealth for the sake of irresponsible companions that he mentions in these areas. The adulterous woman is really a strange woman connecting to the stranger. But I think that he's talking about careful where you do business and whose cloak they may take from you or that you may take for surety. Careful the kind of business you deal in. And I think he's talking about those two things here. What do you think? Could be. I'll take it. You don't think they... Well, I don't think they connect so much, but I think the verse 11 is a heading of things he's offering to his son from here to the end of the chapter. I'm not saying that these have to connect to each other. Like verse 12, I think it can sit by itself. A prudent man sees evil and hides himself. The naive proceed and pay the penalty. I think he's, again, talking about business practices.
I think he's talking about life.
You think about life. And I think he is. And the things, the kind of people you're going to run into. You got to be careful. Take his garment when he becomes surety for a stranger. Who's the his there? I think he's going back to verse 12. The people you are talking with and you're dealing with. When he becomes a surety for a stranger and for an adulterous woman, a strange woman, hold him in pledge. I think he's talking about, again, the business practices, the people you're dealing with. That makes sense? Am I not connecting with that? Seeing a lot of not sure faces.
I think you're right. I think it's advice to, a son or daughter. Being prudent about who you, essentially that your reputation, you have the same name as me. Don't embarrass me, number one. And number two,
Well, yeah, that's probably better to see it more in general. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm thinking, a prudent man, again, he's on the road to Jericho. He knows there could be trouble. He takes care, i.e., he hides himself, goes into the light, something like that. The naive and gets robbed,
Follows into robbers. Okay.
pays the price.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you're probably right about that. On the verse 12, for those who are online, be more general, not necessarily business practice. Okay. Yeah. Iron sharpens iron. We're going to find that here in a few moments.
Not there yet. And 13, we don't do a lot of surety these days, so it's a little outside of my experience anyway.
And I'm not sure that should be adulterous woman. I don't know if that ought to be that translation. There's different takes and commentaries on that. Yeah, it's literally strange woman, and most of the time when you see that, it's talking about an adulterous woman, but it doesn't seem to be that here.
Interesting. Okay, this is the
New American Standard. Up there.
his garment when he becomes a guarantor for a stranger, and for a foreign woman sees a pledge from him,
Foreign woman.
which
Foreign.
I like better than adulteress for sure.
But it's literally a strange woman, with the literal translation.
And foreign would fit that.
And generally, when we see that in Proverbs, it is an adulterous woman, but the context doesn't seem to tell me it's an adulterous woman. Because that's weird. It's going to be a weird thing. For an adulterous woman, hold him in pledge. Okay. Odd. So I don't see it that way. All right. Verse 14. He who blesses his friend with a loud voice early in the morning, it will be reckoned a curse to him. I agree. Who would want that early in the morning? Loud voice. Is that one obvious or need more explanation on that one? Social sensitivities lacking maybe, so they do something that would be irritable to them. So warning, don't be this way, son. Like we were saying earlier, that the opening verse, verse 11, what you do reflects back on me. Don't be this way when you're out there in the world and living amongst all these people. Verse 14, verses 15 and 16. A constant dripping on a day of steady rain and a contentious woman are alike. He who would restrain her restrains the wind and grasps oil with his right hand. Okay, interesting. So we know verse 15, constant dripping. What was that? Waterboarding, but it's not necessarily that. They call it the Chinese torture. They set you back and they drip, drip, drip. Have you ever heard about that? Read on why that would be torture, having one drip of water hitting you on the forehead for hours on end? What happens after a couple of hours of that?
You're always waiting for that next drop.
Okay, the annoyance of it. What else? There's something else.
More sensitive in that spot.
Yeah, very sensitive. It's like when you're riding your bike and you're barely scraping the side of your leg. At first, it's not a big deal, but after a while, it starts to hurt. After a while, that drip becomes excruciatingly painful, and they just can't take it, and it just keeps coming. So a constant dripping on a day of steady rain and a contentious woman are alike. So contentious, that's be nagging or a quarrelsome. What's happening here with the wife or the woman here? It doesn't stop. It just doesn't stop. It's ongoing. Yeah, getting wore out. And he who would restrain her restrains the wind and grasps oil with his right hand. Is that even possible?
Both of those actions are futile.
Yep, all three of them. Can't do it. So what is the point he wants his son to see?
Stay away from a contentious woman.
Stay away from her, who is constantly that way. Constantly. Stay away from her. Don't have dealings with her. Iron sharpens iron. So one man sharpens another. We use this one a lot. It's what we're doing now.
What is the real significance of that term, iron sharpens iron? Iron really doesn't sharpen iron. Iron is sharpened by other things that are harder than iron.
You know?
When you rub iron together, it just wears both iron pieces of iron out. But I was thinking about that all day today after reading this. That you watch the old movies, and I know this is not a good basis, but the guys are always sharpening their swords when they're going out to war. What
Yeah.
are they doing? They've got this stone, sharpening the edge of that. They don't rub two swords together to do that. I just wonder what the significance
Well,
is.
Carving knife can use a sharpening steel.
yeah, I was going to say, I wondered about this. I didn't look up the reasoning, but whenever I see that, I always think of I have that long steel, whatever you call it, sharpener. You
Sharpening steel.
you take the knife back and forth on it, sharpening it. So it's this metal on metal, not necessarily iron, but I guess it's how it's graded. Is the way I've always envisioned that.
During the writing of this, though, they would have thought more almost like we think of a blacksmith and an anvil, as far as when you're sharpening iron, the iron is heated up and
You're-
there's friction, beating that the other piece of iron sharpens it
Through molding it into its original shape, getting out all the kinks.
I think they would have thought of it more in that light, as far as from just simple two cold pieces of iron. I think they would have thought about it going through this
Okay.
very tough process.
Yeah, because after going out to battle and you're swinging your sword, you're putting all these dents and dings in them. It needs to be fixed, and you come in to a friend to have that fixed out. So a man sharpens another. Whenever I'm having a rough day or things are going poorly for me, I'll give Guy Orbison a call or one of my preaching friends, and we'll just discuss things, and it'll be iron sharpening iron, helping me overcome some difficulties I'm dealing with. What?
You reach out to a neighbor, not your brother far away.
Hey, he is my neighbor. Do you know how long it takes me to call him? 2 seconds. And he's right there. He's not far away. No. Well, if his son could make an Alexa phone call like I can, then I'm sure his dad would say, do that. But since you cannot, it'll take you a long time to wander from the nest, don't do it. I'm in the right here. So man sharpens another. Verse 18. He,
Just in thinking about steel too, maybe it's different than iron, I guess, but there's different qualities of steel, when you're working with it, once you heat it up and then you put it in, hot oil, you quench it,
Mhm.
and that really hardens it. So there's, you can have hardened steel and soft steel that is, much more pliable still. So maybe there's different qualities of iron that, where one is harder and maybe it could sharpen the other. Maybe they used to do something like that. Maybe I wonder.
Well,
Interesting, he didn't say bronze or any of the other metals that they had.
Yeah.
Bronze would have been exceptionally common. We know it was used in the temple, or tabernacle and the temple. So bronze was available. It was easier to work, frankly.
well,
He probably made swords. Bronze swords would not have lasted near as long as an iron sword.
or maybe he liked the way the rhyming worked more with iron. No, I don't know.
It is poetry.
Yeah, it is true.
That statement meant something to them.
Yeah, and this is coming off the heels, as Jim was noting, this is coming off the heels of go to your friends, those who are nearby, for help. Don't go to the stranger. Don't go to the naive. Go to those who can truly help you. Like iron. So when he said iron sharpens iron, I'm sure the son's thinking, like you said earlier. So man sharpens another.
Strong, working with strong benefits both.
That's right. That goes back to debates. There's a reason why debates have fallen apart nowadays, because maybe it's by design. As long as we are not helping each other find the best solution, we're never going to grow as a nation. And we've stopped talking to one another. We are no longer sharpening each other like we used to in this country. And as a result, We're on thin ice. Verse 18. He who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who cares for his master will be honored. Tending a tree, eating its fruit. That's the analogy. Honor gained by being faithful about those, like, the master whom you're honoring. It comes on this idea of prosperity, learning to deal with others. It need not be. I wouldn't take this as a proverb just for, like a slave, as some take it in some of the commentaries. But it's talking about the way we speak with people, the way we deal with those who maybe are boss or those that might be in charge or over us. So he who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who cares for his master will be honored. Not necessarily a slave master, but those who are put over us. Think of in the days of the Jews, for example, in the New Testament, going to the temple, or maybe going to, let's say, Matthew, the Levi, the tax collector at the time, and befriending him and being kind to him. And then one day you come along, you can't get your taxes paid, and now that you're friends with him, he can help you out and get you where you need to go in a little more extra time, because he would have that kind of power and that ability. That would also go to what Jesus was saying: make friends with those with wealth in your time. So when the day comes in need, you will have it. And so I see that happening here. So tending the fig tree would be tending your friends, being kind and generous toward them. And then when your day of need comes, they may be there for you as well. I know there have been times where with my neighbors, I've been trying my best to build up good relationships with them, with Scott, with Steve, and others. And now whenever something comes up, they come let me know. Or if they need something, I help them with their computers. They have eggs, they just give me free eggs. And nowadays, that's a lot of money. Scott, they were doing a yard sale. They came by and gave me a basketball, gave me that new chair we put in that office, and a few things that we could use. And Steve, well, he gives me interesting commentary, but you can take what you can get. But I see, that's what I think of. Whenever I come across this verse, that's what I'm thinking. All these relationships that I am tending out there, I am benefiting them. They also, in turn, benefit me in times. And I don't ask for it, but it does come. I remember, I can't remember her name. I think her name was Maria. Remember Maria? We used to always work with her for the yard sale. She worked at the Circle K way down there. And we had that Bun coffee machine. And they were throwing away the coffee filters at the Circle K. She didn't like that. So she would always bring them and just leave them at my doorstep. That was 6 years ago, and I still haven't gone through all of them. They're still there.
I feel like that verse is also just talking about, kind of your priorities and the things that you spend your time in.
Yes.
It's where you're going to reap, either benefits, or it could be the opposite too. If you're spending your time in the wrong priorities, it could reap things that are not good.
That's right. Yeah, because if you're wanting figs from the fig tree, you need to tend to it. So you're going to spend time, whatever you spend your time on. So if you have a master, if you have a boss, spend your time, going back to the business idea, spend your time working it, and it will benefit you. If you want to have a good relationship with people, spend time working those relationships. Good point, Alex.
What you get from the life of Joseph.
That's right. The life of Joseph and all whatever situation found himself in, he did all he could for the Lord, to his benefit too. Verse 19, as in water face reflects face, so the heart of man reflects man. That's an interesting one. That's a hard one. Well.
Seems pretty obvious to me.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Your heart shows what you are, your true self. Done.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. I don't know how to complicate it, but that's me.
Well, I mean, that's what I have written down, yes, but I thought it would be more complicated. I think my problem is that I read too many things. Maybe I got myself confused on that, but I did write that corresponding to man himself, the whole person. When you open up commentaries, they're all over the place on this. And so I thought, well, maybe this is more complicated than I thought it would be. Wink. Okay, so I was wrong on that.
I mean, it's not that
Well,
significant difference from what Jesus said. Comes out of the mouth.
that is true. So is in the heart. Oh, wow. I don't know what I was thinking of that. Okay. Sheol and Abaddon are never satisfied. That would be the place of death, or hell and destruction are never satisfied, nor are the eyes of man ever satisfied. Gluttony, a never-ending appetite, envy, always wanting more. It's never enough. Never enough. Like the person when you give them an inch and they want a mile. So is this person. Do you think these are good things to teach a son? I think so. Do we teach these things to our kids? Have you ever sat down and what age? Like my kids are young. My oldest is 10. What age do you teach things like here in verse 19? So the heart is the heart of man, and things like this. Those who would just take you for everything if you let them. When do you teach that?
As soon as they can understand your words.
As soon as they, okay. Maybe at certain level of it you teach throughout their days and as they are growing older.
First time they get a tummy ache from eating too much chocolate.
Yes, that's right. You were not satisfied.
Yeah.
That's right. You know, Jenny has these this candy. I forget what it's called, but they come in a thing about this big. We get them at Costco. Dark chocolate sea salt filled with caramel. They're about that big. Jenny likes candies. She can maybe eat one of those and whatnot. She'll like nibble on it. She forgot to put it away one night. This was years ago, and Jonah woke up early. We didn't know that it was gone. We just didn't realize. Several days later, we were in his room getting the dirty clothes, and I know some clothes underneath his bed, so I reached under there, and there was this container, completely empty. And we asked him about it, and he admitted, yeah, he had eaten that. And we remember him being pretty sick that particular day. It's because he had eaten all that candy, all mom's candy. And we haven't had a problem with him doing that ever since then.
That's what his mom scared him to that was for him.
Probably. The crucible is for silver and the furnace for gold, and each is tested by the praise accorded him. The crucible is for silver, the furnace for gold, and each is tested by the praise accorded him. What do you think?
Purify those silver and gold by heating it and
Right.
testing it, you know. And so, same thing with man. You're tested and tried, and I guess you know a lot about a man by the things that other people say about him.
Okay. Evaluate your friends or men carefully.
Because of an experience of mine, I'm going to say it looks. How one handles praise is like the crucible. It can be good and it can be bad. When I know I mentioned this, I was in a preaching rotation in Norfolk after I was fired as preacher. And after the lesson, you go back and everybody went, oh, what a great job you did. And I
Okay, so
It wasn't good for me.
for those online, Jim's saying that this could be good or bad, and that when you're tested, how are you coming out? Are you the dross, or are you the refined silver and gold? Depending on your attitude of how you receive the praise. I like that. That's good too. That's good. I wrote here similar to what Alex was saying. Evaluate men carefully. One of the quickest ways and safest means of assessing someone's character is their reputation that they have out there, of those who already know him. And I get that from, and each is tested by the praise accorded him. But I like what Jim had to say there as well in verse 21. All right, let's get through this. 22. Though you pound a fool in a mortar with a pestle along with crushed grain, yet his foolishness will not depart from him. You pound a fool in mortar. I like that. All right. Kind of similar to the crucible in a way, mortar and pestle. The message, I think, is, fools in their folly are inseparable. The implication, I think, is you need to choose your companions again wisely. Remember, he's talking to his son. Don't go hanging out with the fool. There's those fools again that Larry was talking about. It's all throughout Proverbs. So how often does the writer think his kids are going to come across the fool? Has it changed much today? Man, you come all the time. And when you make our...
But this is so very pointed. You can't fix a fool. That's basically what this is saying. You can't leave it out of it. You can't fix it. So stay away.
That's what it does seem like. That's kind of... How has anyone ever here run across a fool and not been able to get them to see that they were moving in the wrong direction?
Sometimes people will make corrections and move in a good direction, but sometimes, no matter what you do,
They keep falling into that same trap.
you never make a correction.
How often should we help them?
You should always try.
Should always try. We should always try. The last section. Know well the condition of your flocks and pay attention to your herds. For riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations. When the grass disappears, the new growth is seen, and the herbs of the mountains are gathered in. The lambs will be for your clothing, and the goats will bring the price of a field. And there will be goat's milk enough for your food, for the food of your household, and sustenance for your maidens. Ultimately, it's kind of like with the fig tree, take care of your business, and it will take care of you. See to your own. Do your work. Don't sit around like the fool and do nothing. That's what I see he's saying in these last verses.
24 is almost prophetic, considering the crown's going to split here with half generation at this point.
No, true. So, chapter 27. What do you think?
Be conscientious.
Now, think through things. Think through things. I see that all through the chapter. And we are living in a time where, I shouldn't really say living in a time, it seems to always be here where people don't think through what they're saying. They don't think through their actions or the consequences of those actions. And if we could get everyone to implement Proverbs 27, would this country move in a better direction overnight? Man, yeah. And is it that hard? Chapter 27, 27 verses. Not that hard. It's pretty simple, easy to see. But man, it's like pounding on the mortar. It's like you're pounding on the fool. They just don't see it. How hard is it to see that a man cannot be a woman? How hard is it to see that you should not allow children to make choices like that?
The appeal of greed and power is so
Pretty strong.
and overcomes common sense.
That is so true. The power of greed, the power for more power, Mick was saying, overcomes common sense. And they just don't think through things.